Sharon's got the gigs. That was
naughty because you knew that was happening. I'm going, no, and you're still going ahead.
You got the giggles, yeah? You got a little bit of gigs. No. Look at your face. She got you beefing.
I apologise, everyone.
Oh, you got the giggles.
You know what it's like when you get the giggles.
Why are you crying? Tickling and giggling and wriggling. You ready? Compose yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You all right?
Yeah.
Yeah? Did you get on with the show?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Let's go. Right, okay. Hello, everybody. Welcome. This one today as part of the Tinpot mini-series with... Excellent. You're making me all surf and poopy now, which is very relevant to the topic. Right, well, Sharon has a crisis.
Oh dear.
You all right?
Not really.
You look like you're beefing. My beef butts. Right. Shall I just be professional?
You go for it. Oh, if anyone wants a bit of a laugh, there you go.
Sharon's got the gigs.
Sharon losing it on camera while we're
excellent.
live.
I cannot wait for this to go out. Okay, so as part 6 of the 10-part mini-series of the...
Don't look at me.
Don't look at me. Don't see me now.
Don't look at me.
Of the Your CX'y, and we know it. I can only apologise, listeners, for my completely unprofessional co-host here. Why you sound like that?
So I'm trying to stop laughing.
What, hugging yourself? Do you need a hug? I don't want to cross boundaries.
You can stay over there.
Oh, that's the confidence boost I needed today. So this one is one that's very dear to my heart and my bum, if I do say so myself. So this chapter is called Ploperal. I'm going to mix a few here, though, because we've got Ploperal and we've got Fish Out the Plop. So I'm going to read Ploperal, but I think I'll bring in elements of Fishing Out the Plop. Do you agree?
These are both written by Mark.
Oh,
I have
look
nothing
at that.
to do with them.
Absolutely. I'm sorry, but I think it says on this book, authored by Mark Parker, Sharon Boyd and John Parker. Is your name on that book, Sharon Boyd? I commit to the jury that on that book is Sharon Boyd's name.
I'm trying to claw back a bit of professionalism. Can you see? Desperate clawing.
Okay. Right. So, as always, I'm going to read the key takeaway, the MKLism, and the main body. So this one should be fun. I even have a video ready to go of TikTok, which will make this relevant. I'm excited just by looking at that. Okay. Are we ready?
We're ready.
Are you sure?
Mm-hmm.
Can we get on with it?
Hit it.
Right. Key takeaway. Sometimes life gets up in your grill and you have no choice but to start from scratch. Recognize that this is not the end when this happens. It is an opportunity to stop, regroup, and go again. Remember, this time you're starting from experience. MKLism. So just to make this clear, I wrote this. Some lessons. There's some great lessons here, if I do say so myself. Really great guy. When COVID hit back in March 2020, everything in MKL stopped on a dime. Clients hit pause. Purchase orders were cancelled, and some clients were holding on to their money and not paying invoices. I can't say what I want to say about that. It was very much a Mayday moment. We needed revenue and quick. Cash is the lifeblood of any business. The only gig we could land in that moment was supporting fitness centres in decommissioning ahead of the impending lockdown. So just to give a bit more context of that, what was happening in the fitness centres is they needed to make their businesses safe for the subsequent 3 or 4 month lockdown that we were going in, because it was a high traffic area with people. they needed to be done in a certain way. So that was the only work that we could get to make sure that we could get some money coming into the business. This involved shutting off critical assets safely, so from an electrical point of view, and this was the worst part, cleaning the drains in the locker room showers and then sealing them up to prevent infestation. We literally went from installing state-of-the-art technology to ragging pubes out of the drain overnight. Talk about being sent back to go. We called this period of our lives Puby Salad.
Excellent name.
It was horrendous, but we had to find humour in the situation to get us through. Mm-hmm. It was extremely stressful, and very quickly, John and I formed a bubble. You know, if you remember back in COVID times, you had to have a bubble, and we're brothers, so we could ensure we could continue to work. However, the situation was made significantly worse by John rocking me daily, with stinking boffs in the car. It was relentless and completely without remorse. We were driving up and down the country, exhausted and worried. We'd built a fantastic business. It was our passion and our life. Blood, sweat and tears. Other businesses were failing around us. Would we make it through? Everything came to a head one day when John took a rubber surgical glove from in the car, which is what we use to rag the pubes out of the drains, and farted into it, so much so that it blew up like a cockerel's head, or in this case, a Ploperal. He calls the noise he makes whilst doing this whispering cats, because you know what noise you make when you whisper a cat? Pss, 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 pss. Pss, 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 pss. Pss, 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 pss. And I'm just going to divert a little bit here, because every time he was doing it, at the same time, Kevin Hart had recently launched his new stand-up gig, and there's a clip in there where he's on about a gun compartment and he's on about giving someone what he wants. And I'll play it, and this was I was crying for John to stop. It was horrendous. It was very worrying time, and he's just going, "Oh yeah, what are we going to do in minutes of time?" You know, really, really worrying. And all he was saying back to me was this. So hopefully it'll play.
Okay. I'm gonna give you what you want. I'm gonna give you what you want. Just let.
That's what he do. I'm gonna give you what you want.
But that's the thing, you need the humour in there, don't you?
Hang on, we're still in. Let's continue. I know. So he would constantly say that to me. Okay. So back to this. So how are you whispering cats? Pss, 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 pss. Gross. It nearly broke me. However, in some way, the Ploperal set us free, as it pushed us to our very limit of our mental capacity. And we survived, Sharon. It was a low but very memorable moment. Main body. And I apologise if there's little ears listening, because there is swearing in this. We got through the chapter in our lives titled Puby Salad, and thank fuck, I never want to go back. There will be more hard times to come. But if we have to restart, we will. Stressful situations present themselves all the time. Yet how you deal with them really sets you up for failure or success. As I write this, I'm currently on a personal challenge. I forgot about this. I'm currently on a personal challenge to push myself to the limit at work for 6 months. No days off. None. Which goes back to our other point around the previous episode 5 around being a monster in intentional leadership, wasn't it? Yeah. Being a monster but being able to control it. The only reason I'm doing this is I want to see what happens. I'm making mistakes and adding significant stress to my already stressful life, yet opportunities are starting to shake loose. As with making mistakes, we're also failing fast, learning, and then moving on. I'm at the very limit of what I'm capable of. However, this is making me see what I was leaving on the table in my professional life. We're all capable of so much more. We just need to seek out the opportunities to suffer and embrace the lessons in it. And of course, the more we work, the more we achieve. It's hard, but it will be worth it. It already is. I have symbols in the team to keep us going when we feel like stopping. One day, I'd love to own my own Rolls-Royce Ghost. I have the silver bonnet statue, the Spirit of Ecstasy, on my desk to keep me firmly focused on my goal. She faces me, so that one day, when I own one of those beautiful crafted machines, I'll see her facing away from me as I look out over the bonnet. That's when I know all this hard graft was really worth it. Yes, and there she is there. For listeners, Sharon's just picked up the statue of the Spirit of Ecstasy. And Tom Bayou, he quotes, "If failure, embarrassment and ridicule derail you emotionally, your progress will stall." Call to action. Find one thing you want and work your arse off for 6 months at that one thing and just see what happens. That's a really interesting chapter for me because it's funny. It is funny. I'm not going to lie to you. The Ploperal was a low point in my life. It was really low. But take the boffing out of it, which just made a shit situation a lot shitter. The world was ending. We didn't know what was going on with COVID. Everything was stopping overnight, and it just seemed to happen so quickly. And then we're going, well, how can we have these packs, these technology rolls out happening, and it's all stopping? And now I am literally ragging out pubes from a drain in a shower.
And that's why you needed that humour in the car to lighten everything.
I think we did. I think. I mean, they say, don't they, in the military that the humour in the military, its soul is as black as night because of the situations that they find themselves in. You have to find humour in that to, in some ways, depower the situation.
It's that laugh or cry thing, isn't it?
But there's a lesson in there, isn't there? Because we've heard this before about a guy that we speak about quite frequently, he's David Goggins. I heard him on a podcast talking about, he calls it going back to scratch. So going back to basics. How many people can do that? How many people can get so far, think it's going to happen, something happen, and then you're sent right back to the start? That's hard to do.
Yeah, because you've got to completely reinvent yourself.
And also there's implications of that. You just think about it from our world. So before we started MKL, I had a very well-paying job in the corporate world. Life, arguably, was easy. I didn't really have much stretch, if I'm being honest. 2 or 3 holidays a year. That's just the way it was. But then all that stopped quite quickly. This is before COVID, when I was made redundant twice in 12 months. And then I went from having a very good salary to then starting this company and having a very bad salary, well below the national minimum wage.
Which is what you do while you build it up.
But that's going back to scratch. And not, I generally don't think many people would say you're going to take an 85 to 90% reduction in your wage, and that's you now for 3 to 4 years. And even then, you're not going to get back up to where you were from a salary point of view. Yes, you might be putting value in your business, but in terms of your take-home pay, it's going to take a long time for it to get back up to whatever it was before it changed.
And that's what makes it harder, isn't it? Because you've got those sleepless nights as you go from, I've managed to build a business, I'm getting somewhere, COVID, right back down.
Well, what was hard for me was hearing the stories now very recently of old prospects that we were working on, which then fell away and which are now starting to come back. And hearing the talk around, well, we were going to sign this off. We were literally just about to sign it off. But unfortunately, with COVID hitting, we didn't know what to do. So we just sat on our cash and you sat there. It's very hard. I know you shouldn't go, what if, but it's hard not to think. Because that's a different timeline now. That's a different universe where COVID hasn't happened and COVID has happened. And we are where we are. But the reason why I wanted to write that chapter was, one, it's funny. It's a funny story. It is a funny story of 2 grown men ragging pwabs out of a drain and doing that day in and day out for the whole of lockdown. You know, we must have gone to 4 or 5 separate gyms in the day for 5-6 days a week. It's just the way it was. And then to add to that, the invoices and the work that he'd already done, people not paying, and then people having to get put on furlough, and then your staff asking you about furlough. You don't know anything about furlough because it's also new. I never even heard the word furlough before COVID.
Yeah.
You've got all that. When am I going to get paid? Can I come back? When can I come back? When stuff going to come back? You don't know any of this. Yeah. And then for him to then start to rock me out in the car constantly. I don't know what was going on with him those couple. Maybe it was nerves or something. But I swear to God, I think he's got irritable bowel syndrome because he was absolutely. It was the worst it's ever been, and I remember we laugh about it today. I don't know what day it was, but I remember one day he picked me up, and it must have been about 6 a.m, call it a Wednesday or a Thursday, you know, a high stress situation. So you're not sleeping well. Every day is just hard. And I walk out and I'm already annoyed because I just am. Walk out, get in the car, and he looks at me and goes, "Morning." And it was just, I said, and as I'll never forget it, as I'm driving up my street, and I talk about it now, I said to him, that was the lowest point at that snapshot then in my professional career, I would say. But it wasn't just the fact of getting rocked in boffs. Yeah. It was everything on top of it. But I don't know why it's almost like him boffing it was someone, you know, I always imagine it's someone official getting a document and going, void.
The straw that broke the camel's back.
Yeah, his boff was have that. But getting sent back to scratch, I think, sometimes is important.
Well, I think if COVID hadn't have hit for me, I wouldn't have set up MKLCX. I would have gone back into the corporate world. And
you were desperate to do something with customer experience as well.
I was.
And you can't, you don't know now. You don't know. Because we could have this conversation now and you go, I think I still would have done it. Would you?
No,
because I don't think I'd have done this.
No, I had all my interviews and everything lined up.
But you're in your bubble as well. You know, you're earning a good wage. You've got a mortgage. You've got kids. Yeah. You've got your commitments. You do your track days. Yeah. You've got your M3.
Yeah. Why would I throw it all away? Because effectively, that's kind of what you do when you start your own business. It's such a risk. It's so fulfilling, but it's a risk.
Well, it's a mega risk because it could all stop tomorrow.
Well, just like it did with COVID. That's exactly what we saw, didn't we, for business after business?
I remember having the conversation with our accountant at the time, because you do have a lot of conversations with your accountant because you're saying, what can I do with HMRC? You know, this VAT bill is due. I've heard that you can defer it. I heard there's these grant schemes available. How do I get a bounce back loan? All this stuff was coming into it. And I remember having the conversation. This is... I'm not saying COVID's over, but I'm on about in terms of the height of the hysteria of COVID in terms of the lockdowns and all that lot. And I remember having the conversation and I said, and she was saying, you know, you guys have done so well. I'm looking at the P&L and I'm thinking, we don't look like I've done that well because it's like 80, 90% down on what it was in 2019. Not so much what was going on in 2020 with COVID, like for like. And she went, well, yeah, Mark, you might be that. Yeah, I get that in the numbers, but I'm telling you now, there are so many businesses that were in a portfolio that are not around anymore. And the reason why they're not around anymore, and I'm sort of paraphrasing on what she said, but the reason why they're not around anymore is because they wouldn't go back to scratch. So the best way she described it to me was the tsunami's coming, and the tsunami is COVID. And there's nothing you can do to stop that tsunami. It is coming for you. Whereas she said, what we did is we grabbed a surfboard and got on it. And when it's bumpy, you know, we might have nearly fallen off every now and again. You know, you're losing little bits of your board and things are going off. But a lot of people dug their heels in and went, I'm going to take this straight on. And the tsunami just wiped them out.
Well, you had to really put your egos aside, really. I mean, going into the gyms and, as you say, digging that out of the drains.
Digging what out? Come on, let's get the listeners what they want.
Pubic hair.
Digging
that out of the drains. That is something where, you know, you're an MD and COO of a company that was doing really well. And as you say, big roles in corporates before that, and then suddenly you're having to go and do that to survive. You are having to put your ego aside, and not everyone's willing to do that.
No, not
And that's
not
why
a
you
chance.
survived.
How many times have you met people that we say it, give it big licks, oh, I can do this and I can do that. I know plenty of people that I knew in the corporate world that they won't even go and make their own coffee.
Yeah, you've got to, as a leader, you've got to be willing to get your hands dirty, and if you don't, then you fall flat.
Well, you've got to be in with the trenches, haven't you, to use that military term, to be able to fight with the troops. And when your back's against the wall and you look like you're going to lose, being sat in command and sipping your Sancerre and going, oh yes, the battle is going to be like the war. It's never going to work. You've got to get stuck in and get involved. And that's what we did with the lads. So we had to put them on furlough because there just there was no work to keep them there.
They weren't allowed to work anyway.
Well, exactly. You couldn't work because we couldn't go anywhere. The only gig we could get was to do that with the gyms, and that was classed as a critical job, because if you didn't, then it's a dangerous situation with the electrical equipment, but also it's a hygiene factor because I can't remember what they call them, drain flies. And what the other part of that story is we had to recommission them as well, which was probably just as bad, because when you recommission them, you're going in and once you ragged everything that you could out of the drain without having to pull the drain apart, you put duct tape over that, and that was supposed to stop the drain flies coming up. So because there's stagnant water in there, if you sat still for 3 or 4 months, there's no one having a shower, it's going to get bad. 3 or 4 months down the line, when they were starting to look like open things up, and we had to then go and recommission these gyms, 2 things happened. One, a lot of electrical equipment failed because a lot of this electrical equipment had never been turned off in a long time.
Right, yeah.
If you think it's a 5-year fixed wire test, if it hasn't been turned off in 5 years, turned off now, right, go turn it back on. That's not working. That was the first problem. And the second one is you had to take the tape off the drains. But over 3 or 4 months, things start to settle and things start to bubble up.
Yeah.
A lot of gas build up, and then you rag those. I remember ragging a couple of pieces of tape off some of these drains, and the flies. It was just a wall, but they're not big flies. They're like tiny flies, but they go in your eyes and all sorts of stuff. And that was a real low moment for us. But this series is called specifically about CX, but I would say this is more of a leadership conversation now, because that was such a bad time that I've never forgot that time. And in some ways, I'm glad we had that time. Now, obviously, I'm not saying I'm glad that COVID's happened, because it's a horrendous thing, it's COVID. And if I had a magic wand, I wish it never happened, but it did happen. But if I look at it from a business point of view, if you were to say to me in back end of March 2020, are you going to survive? I'd have said no. I said, or maybe a more upbeat version of that would have been, I don't know.
But give it our very best, but who knows?
Well,
There's so much uncertainty.
It was tough. It was tough.
It was more than that as well, because for you and John, it hit you personally in your families, didn't it? Both of you and John had COVID, and you lost people close in your families. So it's no wonder that when you got into the car, I mean, one of the previous conversations that we've had on the podcast has been about van therapy, hasn't it, and how good that is for the soul. But actually, that kind of period of time when you were able to go into your van, lock the doors, be in your bubble, and laugh, probably just did you the world of good.
Yeah, I completely forgot about that part of it about COVID. Yeah, which I in some ways I don't like talking about that, because it gets me really angry about the people that say COVID's not real. It is real. I've been ill before, but I've never been that ill. I have never been that ill before. And that said, John, it ripped through his household, killed his wife's nan, and his wife's potentially got long COVID symptoms as a result of that. How is that not real?
Well, he thought he was going to lose his wife at one point, didn't he?
Yeah, and I remember us being down at that meeting and having that phone call from him saying that she's going to the hospital, and we were making plans in the background on John's behalf of what we do. I mean, to be honest, he was probably 99% certain that she was going to die, and your business is failing. You're ragging pubes out of a drain. you've had COVID. I've had COVID, survived that. John's now got COVID. His wife's nan is dead from COVID, and his wife is getting blued into to the hospital, and she's already got health conditions because she's a vulnerable person, and they're being told, this is it. But yet you've still got a business to run.
Yeah.
Because he's got 3 young kids.
So any way to let off steam.
And that's why you need humour.
You do. It's really important.
And I think that's why it's important to just mention that we need to make sure we don't lose this. Because I'm seeing a lot lately in terms of the culture of the workforce, of people are so scared about what they can and can't say. Now, what I'm saying here is I'm not saying be chauvinistic, be a pig or anything like that. No, that's never been right for as long as I can remember. But making light of a situation which is quite serious can actually be a massive benefit to mental health. Because if we'd have spiraled at that time, what would have happened to our families? What would have happened to our guys, our employees, the business? You've got to be strong, and that's to the point of that last episode we've just done in episode 5, where you have Jordan Peterson saying you have got to be a monster, but you've got to control it.
Yeah, you've got to have strong resilience, haven't you? I remember when I was doing the training in the prisons and talking to all the prison officers, and they're like, well, every other day we watch someone bleed out. How do you deal with that? All we have is humour. That is a tool that's in our arsenal, and it's uncomfortable. And sometimes people watch us and go, "Why are you laughing about that? You're making light of it." And they're like, "No, what else can we do? Otherwise, we'd be on the floor. We have to. That's the tool that we have to use." But to an outsider, it could look.
Well, we were when we were in Iraq many moons ago, 2003, 2004. You would see horrendous things, and terrible things, things that you just, no matter how much preparation you put into it, and you are classed as a leader. Then, if you're a section commander, you've got guys underneath you, and that is life and death situations, and you see stuff and you do stuff which is bad, but the humour that comes as a result of that is things that I don't want to say the general public would not understand, because they're not soldiers. I mean, I think a lot of people wouldn't understand the humour. And I think if you can find that balance between taking this thing out of a tale of a stressful situation, but with carefully and very much targeted and relevant lightheartedness, it can help you through a difficult time. Now, obviously, you can get that wrong and time it very wrong, and a very much serious situation can be taken even worse if you're saying something really inappropriate. But that's down to the individuals and the characters involved, and understanding what you can do and what you can't do.
Yeah, and that's what a banter is really good at, joining a team.
Oh, see, yeah, you've said an interesting word there, because I said that the other day. I said to my wife is... she likes to tell me she's a HR director somewhere, so she's a spawn of the devil. But I was talking to her about something the other day, and I used the word banter, and she went, "Oh, that's a contentious word, isn't it?" And I went, "What?" I went, "What? I'm the king of Banterbury. I'm Eric Bantner." She's looking at me going, "What?" But she went, "No, you have to be so careful with that, because banter can be bullying." And this is my point. There is a very fine line, and I think it takes a very skillful individual to work out when you try to boost the morale of your team, and indeed your customers, I would say, if it's a very serious situation such as COVID, if you're providing a very valuable service to that client and they don't know if you're going to be around tomorrow, because other business is performing, how you boost the morale of those people through lightheartedness and comedy, and then it sort of crossing that line over to a bit chauvinistic, you being a bit of a bully here and you're picking on someone. Now, you can't... I use the military as an example there, but you've almost got to put that in its own little box as the military, because it's a different breed of the humour and how they deal with those situations. If the general public looking from the outside in, you would say that is 100% uncalled for. You can't say that stuff about what you've just seen, but that's they're not in those situations.
Yeah, it's survival.
Yeah, exactly. Now, to dial that back a little bit in terms of its severity to being in a corporate, you look at yourself and how you performed during COVID times as a leader. You look at your business and how it performed over COVID. Did you treat your customers well? Did you treat your employees well? Did you look after them? Did you check in on them? Did you really dial up the EX part of your CX strategy? Because your employees would have been worried, they would have been concerned. And depending on how you treated them will be very much dependent if they're not still there or they've very much got one foot out the door already.
Most definitely, yeah.
What was that spreadsheet, Sharon? And do you remember it going around in
I
COVID
do.
times?
Yeah.
Who did that? Who pulled that spreadsheet? It was a spreadsheet,
I
wasn't it?
found on
About
Twitter. Yeah, and it was the people that treated employees, I think, the worst. And it was just an open source spreadsheet that anyone could go onto at any point. And people just seem to go, okay, this particular company, this is what's happened, this is how they treat their employees, like they don't give them masks, or they give them no breaks, or they're not allowed to, or they're not able to social distancing in time of like high COVID times, and people wanting to leave. And it was based around kind of it was based on customers looking at how employees are being handled within a company. And I've never really seen that before. It was customers standing up for employees. And I think it was a slight shock for some people to realise that customers care, and they forget that employees are customers and employees are customers' loved ones as well. That's someone's sister, brother, whatever. So people talk, oh, my son is an employee here at WH Smith or wherever. This is how they treat their, like, good or bad. This is how they're being treated. Oh, right, okay. And that changes your mind as a customer. So, yeah, it was very interesting to see it all like that. And there was a lot from really big companies down to the really small ones of, yeah, they're doing great, they're doing this. And no, they're not doing great at all.
Yeah. And, if you're in a retail hospitality type business, yes, they were shut. But if you're treating them poorly when they come back, I mean, how hard was it to get people back, for example? People didn't want to come back. I mean, I remember hearing some of the stories from close friends saying that they're struggling to get employees back, and it was going down the route of a us and them situation, because they're going, well, I'm on furlough. And I remember at the time people asking a guy when you run a business, asking him if they could be put on furlough. But he was saying to employees, no, you're in a role where I need you to be in. No, just put me on furlough. You can claim it through the government. I'll be all right. You're going to top my salary up, all right. You're not going to just pay me the 80%. Come on, because I'm loyal, I'm going to be here. And some of these mechanisms that were in place at the time almost sort of like drove that behaviour. But then what we learned through that was, as long as you're open and honest with your employees and you tell them the situation and the way that the business is performing, and we said to the guys, look, we're honest with you, it is on life support. It's had an accident, it's in ICU, it's on a drip, and it's touch and go if it's going to make it or not. But what we will do is we will still pull on the mechanisms that the government are providing to make sure you have some money to pay your mortgage.
Yeah.
Because if we didn't do that, then zero income. For 3 months.
Yeah, that's hard to swallow.
If you haven't got decent savings or a very rich mum or dad or anything like that, then how are you going to do that?
And you don't know that it's just 3 months, do you?
No,
it felt like
true.
it was going to go on forever, and it has, really.
We're still here now, isn't it? I mean, who knows what restrictions we're going to have. But yeah, and as I said, the reason why we wanted to do this was the book is about CX, and for me, the reason this chapter was in there was, one, I wanted it to be in there because it's a funny story. It is a funny story in terms of the Ploperal, because God knows the amount of 4 PSI he had to blow that thing up. He literally did blow it up, but he didn't even have it on his bare bum. I think he goes commando. But he just sort of like turned into, and he's like holding it in front of me, and then he's letting it go like a really naff balloon that goes all over the car. And it's not a big car, so we're in a very close place. But yeah, it was for the comedy. But also, there are a lot of lessons to be learned in there from how you are as a leader, and more sort of around the EX side which is
Massively.
a very much a big part of the CX side as well.
Yeah, and as leaders, you've really got to think about your employees. Customer experience is so important, but you can't forget that how you treat your employees has a huge impact on your customers every single day.
I think on that note, we'll end it there. And I hope that if you're listening to this, if you're watching this, that you don't have to rag any pubes out of a drain. You also don't have a brother and business partner that will literally put his bum to your face and poop. And I hope that you're well and your family are good.
And you're thriving.
And you're thriving, yes. Have a great day, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.